Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm pretty excited about what we're going to be talking about. I do have several announcements I want to make before we get started. Our July 16th webinar, well, is going to be special. In April, Science and Design delivered the keynote presentation at the High Point Furniture Market. The subject of the talk was a virtual show house where all the design elements were first filtered through the lens of neuroaesthetics and biophilic design. It really was a major success for all the designers, and so many of them literally were tearing up at the end. It was so motivational and moving. Now, our July webinar will be a reprise of the keynote presentation. The original designers will join the webinar to share how and why they designed the rooms they did. And I will tell you, the rooms were just gorgeous. It'll be a treat to see the rooms and get the why behind them. Our August webinar is now settled, and I'm also really excited about this. We'll be talking about art, health, and well-being on August 13th at noon. It's a pretty inspiring webinar exploring the growing field of neuroarts, where art and creativity meet science to improve health and well-being. Joining me will be Roxanne Darling out of Santa Fe, Jenny Fisher out of Asheville, and Trisha Patel out of Philadelphia, all accomplished artists whose work is deeply supported by science and dedicated to healing through creativity. Now, another announcement. If you saw in my newsletter a week ago, I'm asking all Science and Design certified designers to take a look at their projects and submit a project that we can talk about at a later webinar later in the year. We want to start showcasing and illustrating how neuroaesthetics and biophilia can be used in the home. And so I'm asking all SIDC designers to submit a project to me for review. We'll only be able to have like 4 probably, maybe 5 to talk about on the webinar. But please submit your project by July 31st. And we'll include you, if we can, on the webinar later in the year. Now, there are 2 other things I want to make sure you know about. A couple of weeks ago, we installed a neuroaesthetics page on the website. We did it because we wanted to start becoming a library for all of you that you can turn to. Inside the neuroaesthetics page, there's something called a client conversation guide. One of the things I hear all the time is that talking about neuroaesthetics and biophilia, and after today, salutogenic design, sometimes is a little scary or a little difficult. So the client conversation guide handles that for you. There are scenarios, there's Q&A. Go to neuroaesthetics page on Science and Design and download the client conversation guide. It'll really, really help. Additionally, when you go to the website, go to the biophilia page and get the biophilic design implementation guide for yourself. It's a basic step-by-step analysis of how to implement nature-based design. It'll give you practical room-by-room framework for translating biophilic design into your practice. Lastly, if you're not getting my monthly newsletter, go to the website and sign up for the newsletter. We started it about a year ago. We're getting great response on it. So please do that. Okay, enough of the house, the administration. Let me introduce our very, very special guest for today. Helena van Vliet is an internationally recognized expert in biophilic design. Born and raised in Germany, she is a biophilic architect with decades of construction experience, a consultant, researcher, educator, speaker, and author on health and well-being in the built environment. Helena is president of Helena van Vliet LLC, president of biophily, a member of the University of Pennsylvania's Environmental Innovations Initiative, and steering committee member at Biophilic Cities International. Helena considers architecture and design to be health care professions. Think about that. That's what we talk about all the time, and you're going to hear more about that today. Since 2018, Helena has been teaching her acclaimed interdisciplinary seminar, Environments for Well-Being, at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. She assembles a diverse medical group of architecture, landscape architecture, interior design students, as well as medical and biopsychology students to explore the building blocks and underlying science of places and spaces that support health and well-being. Now listen to this part. Helena holds a Bachelor in Architecture from the RWTH in Aachen, Germany, and a Master's in Architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. She teaches and lectures nationally and internationally at various universities, including the University of Pennsylvania, Drexel University, Pratt Institute, the Politecnico di Milano, Italy, and the Bauhaus University in Germany. How about that, huh? Her focus is on biophilic design, biophilic urbanism, and the intersection between architecture, design, public health, and biodiversity. Welcome, Helena.
Thank you. Wow, I'm impressed. Wow. Okay. Thank you so
That's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. And thank you everyone for joining and donating on your lunch hour to this cause. In the interest of time, let's jump right in, Mike.
We will. So there's the influence of science over the last 10 years has really been moving quite aggressively in the world of home furnishings and design. 10 years ago, biophilic design was almost unheard of in home furnishings. 5 years ago, neuroaesthetics was just being introduced. They're both now well recognized in our industry as important movements. We're also seeing, and this is kind of fun, this is interesting, we're also seeing a growing number of discussions on the relationship between designers and clinicians, suggesting that we're prescribing health. Is there a parallel between a clinician prescribing medicine and a designer prescribing a design medicine that also impacts the biology of the individual? And doesn't that actually bring in the subject that we're talking about today, salutogenesis? Take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this is exactly why I'm including medical students and biopsychology students in my courses, along with designers, all through master's, bachelor, master's, and PhD students, because these groups usually do not wind up in the same classroom together. And it's a very interesting conversation that is being had. So yes, salutogenic design, lots to talk about. And I'm going to dive right in and start from the beginning. That means with evolution, our body's regulatory systems have developed, of course, in response to nature's challenges, right? So our essential biology has not actually changed in hundreds of thousands of years, but the places we inhabit have dramatically changed. So we always want to begin with the awareness that places and spaces are never, ever physiologically neutral. They either support physiological well-being or they sabotage it. And really, really understanding that fundamentally awakens the profound responsibility that we have as designers, right? So we are biological organisms, something we tend to overlook a great deal. And we're open systems that are deeply connected on a biochemical level to every place we find ourselves in. So are the occupants of all the buildings that we design. So every material choice we make, every lighting design choice, every furniture choice, every fabric and color we choose has a physiological impact that can be quantified. And biophilic design is, of course, a design methodology that engages this innate connection to nature evolutionarily, and in order to support salutogenesis, right? Meaning we seek to build biological resilience and promote flourishing, not just getting by, not just survival, but actually flourishing. And so we can say that salutogenic paradigm is really the exact opposite of the pathogenic paradigm that most of our healthcare systems are organized around, right? Salutogenic design means design that supports the causes of health and well-being, right? It's restorative, but it's also then innately aligned with preventative healthcare, if you will, right? And build environments that do not meet this goal are quantifiably physiologically inefficient. They do not meet the basic responsibility that we have as designers to provide shelter and enhance physiological life optimization. from immune response to productivity, from creativity to healing, from learning to commercial success, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to, first of all, understand, in order to discuss this further, to understand how current neuroscience actually defines well-being, because that is our goal, right? Well-being, we have wellness days, we have spa days, and so forth. But I wanted to know, in my research, how does neuroscience actually define well-being? And I studied this subject as a practicing architect for literally 40 years. In the 90s, began to look into biobiology, which is building biology, obviously comes from Germany, and then moved on from there into neuroscience, evolution biology, biophysiology, immunology, epidemiology, chronobiology, et cetera, and so forth. So
all of the ologies.
well, there are a couple of more, but I can't pronounce that probably. I always get hung up on those. But so what actually is well-being, right? And per current neuroscience definition, well-being, feelings of well-being indicate that dynamic homeostasis, which is evolution's ultimate goal for every living organism, is in the effective range, period. And here I'm working with a definition by neuroscientist Antonio Damasio, who is the chair in neuroscience, as well as professor of psychology, philosophy, neurology at the University of Southern California, and additionally also at the Salk Institute. So the main goal of effective homeostasis is always the optimization of any biological organism's physiological energy budget, right? And we are, of course, biological organisms as well, along with everybody else. So built environments that optimize our physiological energy expenditures are biologically efficient. And they will support the causes and therefore the felt experiences of well-being. And we can quantify that now, which, in heart rate reduction, blood pressure reduction, immune system support, enhanced cognition, enhanced learning, enhanced healing, and increased productivity, lower turnover in companies, higher retail sales, et cetera, and so forth. I recently read the term performance-driven interiorscapes, which is sort of, heads in that direction, right? So these are the kind of places that are designed to biologically optimize. These are therefore also the kind of places that we long to be in, we long to return to, we remember them fondly. These are the places that we sustain over time, that we take care of, right? And these type of places, and this is a key point, will always be characterized by evolutionarily relevant resource abundance. Resource abundance. It turns out that we're hardwired to recognize those kind of places because they mimic the place ingredients of biodiverse symbiotic systems in nature, right? And since our basic biology hasn't changed, we are drawn to them like magnets. And we know we can now understand and evaluate the place ingredients of those places that signal flourishing optimization to the ancient parts of our brain, which is, 70+% of our brain real estate. We all know these places because they are the very place ingredients of our favorite vacation places, right? So we have, and we all agree on that. We follow each other to those places. So flowing water, right? Our bodies are mostly water, indicating high oxygen levels, lush vegetation, indicating fertile soils, dynamic sunlight, ensuring circadian well-being, courtesy of the experience of the full arc of the sun, dappled, fractalized sunlight, indicating this sweet spot between light, warmth, and shelter, light breezes, indicating the right balance between air movement, that prevents rot and mold, but also offers cooling comfort, right? So places signaling evolutionarily relevant resource abundance, they make us feel safe and at home because our key biological needs are met in those places. So the science of safety, on how we design for safety, for the experience of safety for humans, we could do a whole another webinar on that, right? But there's something called polyvagal theory, sort of a new innovative scientific perspective, includes neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, because when we feel safe, our nervous system supports homeostatic functions of health, growth, and restoration. So it's a key aspect of our work as designers is to make people feel safe on a biological level, where we all share the same kind of requirements, right? You probably are familiar with the biophilic pattern combination, refuge and prospect. This is, one of those safe spaces, patterns where we have this right balance between shelter and protected views for foraging, right? So now let's talk about what happens since we are wanting to understand what environments are stressful. Built environments are stressful. Let's talk about what happens when biophysiological essential place requirements are not met, right? And I've been very interested in really understanding this on my own physiological level, right? Observing my own physiological reactions to places, bringing them to awareness, right? The sense of discomfort, the sense of exposure, the sense of claustrophobia, the sense of boredom in an environment, right? So build environments that do not optimize our body's energy budget exact a very high physiological price. They are physiologically extremely expensive in terms of our body's energy budget, right? And the enemy here is not so much stress per se, because we are actually built to cope very well with short spurts of stress to escape predators, for example, but chronic stress. So day in and day out, if we're in those kind of places over and over and over again, that will take a tremendous toll. And Antonio Damasio, for example, talks about feelings a lot as key diagnostic tools for the detection and diagnosis of homeostatic deficiencies. So when we feel, and I encourage my students to do this and go through their day, really tuning into their feelings, where, they always want to sit, where they never want to sit, etc., and so forth, what is exactly comfortable here or not, so that we can become aware and then we can move forward with that increased information, right? Chronic stress conditions activate ancient biophysiological fear centers. So they make us feel unsafe. This all happens below the level of consciousness, right? Because these kind of places signal evolutionarily relevant resource scarcity. So it's the opposite of resource abundance, right? Over time, this physiological response can lead to something akin to PTSD, right? So these are those denatured gray spaces, hermetically sealed, minimalist concrete, glass, plastics, deserts, relentless, bleak, cold, overly lit, noisy, lifeless, right? Where we are fundamentally out of touch with soils and seasons and climate and weather, right? And placing us out of reach of those key ingredients our ancient body has evolved to require to survive, sets up very deep biological fear and stress responses due to this experience of elemental resource scarcity, right? So under normal circumstances, the body's stress response is self-limiting and passes quickly. But if this goes on and on over time, the fight or flight reaction stays turned on, which means cortisol is elevated chronically, and it begins to reach deep into the hormonal system, the immune system, and increasing inflammatory biomarkers, which are the underlying cause of every single illness, pretty much, right? So it disrupts all body processes, leads to depression, digestive problems, heart disease, heart attack, high blood pressure, stroke, melatonin sensitive cancer in the case of circadian disruption, etc., and so forth. So it's a complete mismatch between those environments and our innate biology, right? And the psychiatrist Carl Jung, already in the 1930s, worked with the awareness that the separation from nature causes dissociations, intense anxiety and loneliness, because essentially we're away from our home, if you will. And as you all know, we spend 90+% of our time indoors now. So indoors has become the new outdoors, or has to become the new outdoors. And we have to make sure that our clients' innate biology is well supported, and restore a sense of belonging as children of the natural world. And this is also important, and we're increasingly understanding this on a microbial level. A lot of that research came from NASA originally, when they discovered that the astronauts in sterile environments started to have weird rashes and allergic reactions, and became generally very kind of stressed because they were away from Earth microbial context. So they started experiment with plants in the space shuttle, et cetera, and so forth. We know that a lot of this information that circulates through our body happens via the gut-brain axis, via the vagus nerve. 80% of that information goes up from the gut to the brain. So the brain takes information, takes essentially information from the rest of the body. And we know that 70+% of our immune cells sit in the gut lining. So when we are separated from Earth's microbial diversity, our immune system essentially is what the American Allergy Association calls uneducated. We will have a greater likelihood of allergies, a greater likelihood of inflammatory disorders, including depression, which is now also considered a gut-brain, has gut-brain implications, right? So healthy interior place ecology is very important for designers to consider. So interior microbial diversity, there's something called probiotic architecture now, which is kind of a funny term, but thinking about how we can incorporate beneficial bacteria into building materials, into design strategies. A lot of our environments are full of human-associated bacteria. This is especially a problem in hospitals where we have these superbugs now, right? So there's a lot of research now on how we can stabilize the interior ecosystem with plants, with living soil, to avoid outbreaks of pathogens, right? So we can see that we're definitely here in the field of healthcare, optimizing physiological performance on all levels. And place design, we understand, is a partner, becomes very much a partner in physiological co-regulation.
You know what? I think it's really interesting that you're saying this, Helena, because a couple of things I've heard from what you've just said. You really focused a lot on evolutionary
Yes.
and the influences. And Nigel, one of the things that we use in our presentation is Nigel Nicholson's famous quote: "You can take the person out of the Stone Age, but you
Yes.
can't take the Stone Age out of the
Yes.
person."
London Business School, right? Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
the other things that we talk about is how design is no longer just an aesthetic. Design is a biological intervention. And it's one of the reasons that science considers our industry, and this is for everybody to internalize. One of the reasons science considers industry an alternative health resource. We are the ones that need to start thinking about that, internalizing that, and taking Helena's comments and wrapping our minds around them to be putting on our websites, to be putting in our confidence level that you do improve health. When you create beauty, you do improve health.
Yeah,
So
I just want to say aesthetics actually, our sense of aesthetics is directly related to survival imperatives, to those evolutionary relevant
sure.
resource abundance. That is aesthetics. That's it. So aesthetics matters a great deal because it's biologically programmed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let me go to my next question, Helena. One of the books that I really like in this whole subject area is a book titled "The Shape of Green." The author is Lance Hosey,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of talk in our industry about sustainability, but Lance gets into the discussion of the relationship between beauty and sustainability,
Right.
saying that they are certainly compatible. But then he says when it comes to one being more important than the other, he says beauty triumphs. How do you feel about that? And do you agree, or do you see a different relationship?
Yeah, I actually don't make much of a distinction between the two for the reason I just discussed in terms of aesthetics. There's a direct evolutionary programming, if you will, for what we consider beautiful. And we only really sustain what sustains us. I mean, I come from a city that was founded by the Romans in Germany. So the buildings that have survived have a lot of fractal content. They are, have very specific place ingredients that we keep repeating over and over again, right? In our sustainability conversation, we have until not too long ago very much focused on the negative, on what we should not be doing. So that has actually activated fear motivators, scarcity vibes. So it's research indicates that leaning into optimism rather than pessimism is a lot more effective to motivate people, right? But in terms of beauty, I wanted to go with the definition by Harvard biologist E.O. Wilson, one of the fathers of biophilia, of course, that beauty is our word for those qualities that have contributed most to our survival, right? So those are those evolutionary relevant resource abundance ingredients that we talked on already, right? That make us feel safe, make us feel at home, right? So neurologically, beauty is defined in terms of effortless understanding on a biological, neurological level. Effortless, again, refers to minimal energy expenditures, right? So more than 90% of our place experience is non-conscious. This is something that as a designer, we have to wrap our heads around somehow, right? More than 90% is non-conscious, right? And we discussed the ingredients that signal flourishing optimization, right? So we have to bake these ingredients into our designs. We cannot apply them later because when the budget comes in, they're going to be out of there, right? They have to be baked in from day one so that they can literally not be removed. This is a very important point, right? So on a body level, and that is how we experience everything. It's not an intellectual or visceral experience, not an intellectual, it's a visceral experience. What we consider beautiful is directly related to this evolutionary flourishing. Whether it's a hospital or a school or an office building, it doesn't matter, or a retail establishment, biology is always the same. So those type of ingredients have to be present in all places. They're also the ones that increase real estate value because we simply, we spend money on what we have a positive emotional relationship with.
I'm glad you mentioned hospitals because in just the last 3 weeks, I've had the unfortunate occasion to be in 3 different doctors or hospital rooms.
Oh.
And, every time I walked into the room, I looked at the doctor and I said, Doc, you're killing me. Uh,
Yeah.
the
Oh
walls
boy.
are just awful. The ceilings are awful. When you go
The
to a
light.
dentist, you have to look up at the ceiling and it's awful. You're already in a moment of anxiety and stress because you're in that room.
Yeah,
Um,
vulnerable, very vulnerable.
what do we have to do? I know this is
Mhm.
out of scope right now, but what do we have to do to get hospitals to start moving more aggressively and doctors' offices in particular, which is an easier place to start, I would think. What do we have to do? Is there, are
Well,
there,
that's why I'm including medical students in my courses to get in
oh,
front
that's
of
right,
that
sure.
somehow. And it's very interesting. A lot of them wind up going into immunology and epidemiology after they take my courses. But Terrapin, of course, has done a lot of research on running
Mhm.
the numbers, right, in terms of benefiting healing. So we have the data. We just need to spread them more effectively, also as sales tools, for designers.
And by the way, Helena just mentioned Terrapin Bright Green. That's Bill Browning and Katie Ryan,
Yeah.
one of our faculty members in the certification program.
Yeah.
And they do get into this subject there, and it's an excellent presentation.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that we're seeing happening in our industry is that we're talking about neuroaesthetics and we're beginning to talk about salutogenic design now, but we're primarily this is a generalization, so forgive me, but we're focusing a little more on the visual. And we know that the word aesthetics implies something much more than just the visual. Why is it important for everybody on this call right now to be sure to be including addressing the senses to help improve the health in the home?
Yeah, in our profession, we have a near total focus on visual at the expense of other senses, right? And it's created, I think, I blame it for creating a lot of lifeless places that really
Hmm.
generate feelings of detachment and stress, therefore, right? So, it's actually one of the major reasons I went into teaching because I wanted to work on that with my students. And we can design the most beautiful hospital, for example, that looks great on paper or on our screens. But if we haven't controlled for the sounds, the olfactory aspects of that, the constant beeping sounds, the dryness of the air due to all the electronics, so too much positive air ionization, we haven't really fully done our job, right? Because
Hmm.
we are open systems. We take information constantly. Our body takes information in through our senses. And we have a lot more than five. We have more than 20, most likely. That's the latest sort of assumption: echolocation, interoception, proprioception, et cetera, and so forth. So the information comes in through the senses, and the brain makes predictions about the causes of what's going on, right? Aesthetics actually is a Greek word that means sense perception, right? And all this happens in below split second speed.
Mhm.
When we're entering any space, we gain information, and the body immediately makes decisions via the autonomic nervous system: get the hell out. It's cozy, it's claustrophobic, it's cold, it's warm. I'm never coming back. I'm coming back soon. All this stuff is before we become conscious of that. Is already the heart rate's gone up and down, the blood pressure's gone up and down, et cetera, and so forth. So we can think of it as a kind of primal body intelligence. Every space is an experience of sensory immersion, completely immersion. We're open systems, right? We found that out during COVID to our detriment, but it's also really connects us all via our breath, which is also a beautiful thing, right? And we know that nature's designed our senses to amplify each other, to work together. So if we're only working with vision, we wind up with a very impoverished design environment, right? That also does not really support cognitive restoration, or even we're not at our best. And I don't know if you know the book by Juhani Palasmaa, The Eyes of the Skin, a Finnish architect. The title already tells you what it's about. And he writes that all senses are an extension of the sense of touch. Because before we are born, our sense of touch is already very active in the womb. Also, our sense of smell, there's some indication of that. But the sense of touch is completely primary, and vision only comes in later. First 10 days of a baby's life, our vision is kind of blurry, right? So the haptic value, the high haptic value of our interior places is very, very important. And we know biophilic time, we work a lot with wood. We describe it as warm. And again, it's an energy optimization. It doesn't draw body heat out of our body like steel does or metals do. It is warm because it resembles the temperature of our body, right? So on a biological level, we understand that, and it lowers our heart rate. It makes us feel comfortable, makes us feel safe, right? And the sense of smell has a direct connection to memories. We know that you've probably experienced that. You smell something and it takes you back to a place where you've been. This is not a thinking process at all. So there's a lot of work done in memory care units with essential oils, et cetera, to bring back early childhood memories, especially before the age of 10. So we can imagine biochemical olfactory recipes for our buildings, right? And for example, my
Hmm.
students all have to do a meditative assignment with a lot of points that excludes vision. They have to do it in the dark and blindfolded because I want them to become aware, and this is especially important in our technology time, which focuses entirely on vision, um, how that, when I exclude vision, how that amplifies the other senses. And they're always blown away. They don't believe it. They think it's the weirdest assignment ever. But once they do it, they get it. So we have to experience it in our own body. We can't just read about it. That's been my experience. And then circadian well-being, experience of light, Non-visual. Light has biological behavioral effects that are hormonal. We know circadian disruption is extremely problematic, causes very high levels of stress and inflammation, major biodiversity killer too. But so as designers, the lighting systems that we specify must respond to circadian rhythms. So we can't have the 4,000 Kelvin LEDs, at night, because it keeps cortisol elevated through the night, which creates chronic stress and therefore inflammation. So we have a great deal of responsibility there as well. So we want to keep lighting, 2200 Kelvin or less at sundown. So amber lighting, firelight, candlelight, that's the level of light color that maintains melatonin levels in the normal range. Melatonin is an inflammatory compound. So acoustic well-being is another thing. I gave you the hospital example. We need to design soundscapes. So the sound and presence of flowing water is a total magnet for us on a biological level. We cannot survive without water for very long. It mitigates road and mechanical equipment noise, which is a big problem in a lot of our buildings because the mechanical engineers put stuff just about anywhere. And it creates a sense of here and now, and it's also, freshness and possibility. Interesting work has been done with birdsong to reduce stress in airports, in children's hospitals, to uplift tired old brands, et cetera, and so forth. So there again, it's that birdsong has also been described as this relaxed mind alert state, right? So it is relaxing and stimulating, but in all the right ways. I don't know if you know the architect Peter Zumthor, he's I believe Swiss. He refers to the interiors of buildings as musical instruments. So how do we design the sound of a building, right? And lastly, negative air ionization. A lot of our buildings are stuffed with electronics and synthetics, and the air is dry, which increases viral spread. The flu loves it. And it also makes us on a biological level very uncomfortable. So plants and flowing water, of course, increase serotonin, reset cognition, alleviate depression, and all that type of thing.
Wow, what a great answer. My gosh. You've mentioned more than a couple times about how when our bodies walk into a room, they have a response within milliseconds. Can
Yes.
we don't use that exact language. We talk about the unconscious mind being in control of our thoughts and actions for the first couple of seconds of experiencing something new. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, we have labored for 400 some years under the erroneous assumption that reason is superior to body. We now know from neuroscience that it's actually wrong. It never did make any sense because reason is really, it's an evolutionary upgrade. It's an additional tool. Nature doesn't do what humans do, destroy stuff and starts from scratch. It builds new systems on top of older systems. So we have these very ancient systems in our body, and then evolution has layered newer systems on top. And consciousness is a newer system. The thinking brain is younger, and it's the slowest part of the brain, right? So the body, it's when you say mind, I want to get us a little bit away from the word mind into the word body. Damasio calls it the body-minded brain. That's a term that he uses, for example, to indicate the information comes up from via the vagus nerve, 80% to the brain, and that the sensory information, the neurological, the biochemical, all of that.
Great. Now I want to ask you about one of the favorite aspects of design for me, and that is because I love the work of Dr. Richard Taylor out of the University of Oregon.
Yes.
And I'm sitting here now in my office and I'm looking out at 100-foot tall oak trees and all of the fractal geometries
Yeah.
that are contained within. Can you talk about the geometries of nature and why they are so important for designers to begin to include in their design processes?
Yeah, you're talking about mid-range fractals.
Yes.
These are the self-similar patterns that are ubiquitous in nature on all scales and all levels. They including our own body, lungs, brain, eyes, cell structure, etc. Um, and we have historically in all cultures translated them into ornament, into silhouette, art, architecture, carpet, tile design, woodwork, fabric, what have you. And it is really a form of uh, connecting us to the source of our life, nature, right? And we consider them beautiful, and we discussed a minute ago the direct connection between beauty, evolutionarily, resource abundance, and physiological optimization in terms of the management of energy, right? And the brain's primary function is not thinking, but it's to manage the energy budget of the body, right? So in terms of fractals, what fractals do is they have this dual component. We discovered two things happen at the same time, right? The brain, the body-minded brain, recognizes a familiar order. And then the body-minded brain at the same time recognizes novelty, right? Um, so this combination, the order provides a reassuring quality. Oh, I've seen this type of thing before, so it's relaxing. That means it conserves energy resources. And that frees up neuronal resources for the exploration of novelty. So that is the soft fascination that we also see in attention restoration theory, low cognitive effort, physiologically efficient. And this kind of combination is irresistible to us. So it's not really vision or eye candy, it's really a neurological experience, right? And it happens to us on a visceral level, right? Yeah.
Mhm. I just asked one of my software friends to take a picture of a forest scene and then drop all the color out.
Yeah.
So what we would then see are all the geometries of nature,
Yeah.
and it was just fascinatingly beautiful to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you compare that which we've inherited from our evolutionary perspective, you compare it to the typical interior environment,
Yeah.
and the typical interior environment is almost void of that
Yeah.
number of geometries. And
Exactly.
it,
Exactly.
it you know,
Yeah,
it
exactly. So, because it's been a lot of our sort of modernist, minimalist designs have been really decoupled from biological relevance.
mhm,
So
mhm,
there's not enough neurologically legible information. So they have a lot of order, but they lack complexity, right? This combination of order and complexity, that's the ticket. So what we refer to as boring places, I mean, they're just dull and boring. That's actually neurologically stressful because the brain is scanning for information and there isn't any, or that's not enough, right? So that is then physiologically very expensive again, right?
It's interesting because before I moved to Greensboro, I was living right in Parkland, Florida, right outside of Fort Lauderdale. And I
Yeah,
did a lot of business with the tall condominiums on the ocean.
yeah,
And all of the condominiums were minimalist. They were the Miami chic, and they were light gray in color. And,
yes,
and not realizing that they were fundamentally unhealthy for the
yeah,
people that were living inside. Hey, I have just one more question before we get to Q&A.
yeah,
And that is, you've already mentioned art, attention restoration theory.
yeah.
I know it's bigger in urban planning and architecture, but can you explain it, and why is it important for interior design?
Yeah, it's particularly important right now because our attention is being hijacked all day long by electronics, and that is the biggest profit engine on the planet right now, attention fracking, right? And it's not the good kind of attention. It is what attention restoration theory calls directed attention or hard focus. The research initially came from the psychologist Kaplan and Kaplan, I think around 1990. So this directed attention or hard focus is physiologically, again, highly expensive. It's depleting, right? We're screening out the pop-ups, it's right. It's not the same attention that we experience in nature, which is effortless, which is called soft focus or soft fascination. Think like gazing, right? So in the nature settings, our attention is restorative. It's physiologically efficient because it doesn't tax us. It's not stressful, right? So uh, nature therefore offers protection against cognitive fatigue. It reduces anxiety, reduces this resolution of internal noise, right? And the four components are being away, soft fascination, extent, and compatibility. And I want to just talk about extent for a minute because it turns out that the richness or the depth of biodiversity is a lot more important than the size of an area. So a small biodiverse place has been proven to be more restorative than a large, let's say, mowed lawn desert, right? That is not really a biodiverse area. So quality over quantity, which is of great relevance for interior designers, I think, because we can accomplish a great deal. And if you remember the microbial diversity importance that I mentioned earlier, we can accomplish a great deal with living walls and these micro ecosystems on the interior, where we're bringing in, actual living soils and flowing water. The keyword is, living walls. The keyword is living. So a preserved moss wall is not what we're looking for. It can actually be full of chemicals. It's not a living wall, right? So that is something that we must accomplish on the interior because we spend most of our time there. And in closing, I just want to say one more thing, if I may, Mike.
Sure.
I want to remind all of us that biophilia is relational and reciprocal, right? So whatever we do, we want to make sure that we are not doing it at the expense of nature at large, right? So a lonely tree in a glass bubble or an assortment of trees in an atrium without bird-safe glazing to protect the birds that will try to get to those trees is missing the mark, right? Because we are constantly needing to give back to the systems that sustain us. We cannot pursue biophilia or biophilic design as a sort of a luxury pursuit. It's not hitting the mark.
Well, go through a webinar like this, and for all of the traditional designers that may be listening in right now, look at where our industry is going. Look at how it has arrived to this point. And all of we've seen comments like there are great quotes coming out of this webinar, and we're getting a lot of positive comments right now. Look at the value perception, the value proposition of our industry, and how it has changed from 20 years ago, just because of what science has found and helped us with. And I will tell you, our certification program is filled with this type of information, and with academics and scholars from all around the world. We're trying to get every interior designer in the country. I realize that's an ideal, but we're trying to get every designer certified so that we can all be improving the health of our clients, and so that our industry can be considered a health institute, not just a place that creates attractiveness and pretty rooms. So let me see if I can find the question from Robin. Can Helena comment on the synergy between biophilic design and passive house building design?
Yeah. Passive house I think the two can be easily combined, but they not always are, as you probably noted. Passive house can be a hermetically sealed envelope insulated with, chemical insulation like fiberglass, et cetera, and so forth. So it's a little bit challenging, but basically passive design, of course, is always the starting point for any kind of design, right? Passive airflow, passive ventilation, how we deal with light and darkness. So I think when we combine them, we want to make sure that we're including only natural materials where we have where we know where they come from, how they've been sourced. That's also important for reciprocity with nature. And the indoor air quality of passive houses sometimes worries me a little bit if it's insulated with, petrochemically produced insulation materials. So
Helena, I have another question. What were the four elements that you mentioned?
for what? For elements of tension restoration theory?
Um, can you let me find that? Let me find that chat again.
Or
Can you ask the question a little more clearly while I go to another one? Can Helena recommend good books on salutogenic design and principles?
on my website, there are quite a number of books that I value very much. So if you'd like to go to my website, helenavanvliet.com, biophilic design page, I think at the bottom are reading suggestions, which I would start with those. Some of them are neuroscience. There are different types of books. You may know some of them, you may not know some others, but
I think I'm going back to the four elements. One was away, compatibility.
oh,
Um,
yes. Yes. So these are the four components mentioned by Kaplan and Kaplan for attention restoration theory. So the first one is being away. So shifting focus towards nature, even on a small scale. Second one, soft fascination, as opposed to hard fascination, which is depleting. So that is an innate sense of joy we feel when experiencing nature. Extent. I mentioned the depth and complexity is more important than, a vast kind of dead green sort of flat thing, right? And compatibility is defined as fulfillment of an individual's intention and activities without struggle or effort. So there you have that physiological energy optimization again.
okay, I think I've got all the questions done. Uh, any other questions from anybody? We're just about to our ending time. I do want to say one thing before I lose everybody, and that is, and I do this every now and then, but this has been, for me anyway, this has been so invigorating. I really want more of you to get certified and to start using science, neuroaesthetics, biophilia, and salutogenic design now in your work. So let's get educated. I'm going to give you a link, excuse me, a code for the certification program. It's SID 100. And if you sign up by the end of June, that'll save you a little bit of money. So think about it and let's get everybody signed up.
I wanted to also, since we have a moment, say to interior designers, and I say this to my interior design students all the time, to really take ownership of what's going on outside of those expanses of glass or any kind of window. Sometimes interior designers are reluctant to do that, but what goes on outside has a lot to do with how we feel inside, right? So taking ownership and really influence on bird safe glazing, vegetation outside, ventilation issues, natural ventilation issues, etc. So thank you.
All right. Let me see. Thank you. This was inspiring. Helena, we're getting an awful lot of applause. No, you're getting an awful lot of applause
Oh, thank you.
and
Well,
a very inspiring comment. So thank you very much.
well, I want to say that this is an emerging field, as you know. I'm constantly reading more. I'm constantly learning more, and it's very exciting um, to get out of the sort of hit and miss department in terms of design into a very intentional curating of, environments, built environments that we can quantify the benefits of on a physiological level. Yeah.
And I just remembered there's one other question I saw, and I can't find it now, but it dealt with how to market this information. Because it's one thing to learn the knowledge, it's another thing to be able to speak the knowledge. I want to do two things. I want to refer you back to the neuroaesthetics page, and the biophilia page on my website. You'll have great comments and great quotes that you can turn to. And also go back to the webinar I did a couple of months ago with Jennifer Smiga. Jennifer is my digital marketing firm, and we interviewed her, and she gave us a lot of tips on how to use science in our marketing process. So there's some good places to start anyway. And if you still don't find what you need, and this is for everybody, I say it every webinar. Reach out to me. I talk to 3 or 4 designers every day. And so email me at mike@scienceanddesign.com and I will answer your emails. And
I
we may,
wanted to, if I may, as an architect myself, I wanted to just comment on the marketing question. My experience in many decades of working this way is show is a lot more important than tell. So if the design is emotionally compelling, which means the client loves it, we've done it correctly. We have met all these points that we've talked about. And I've many times experienced that it was, as you know, everything's always over budget, right? Like, it's over budget, everyone collapses. I make a list of things that we could take out maybe, and none of them are taken out because the client loves the design and we're finding the money somewhere, right? So, and the other thing I wanted to mention, I recently gave a talk at an interior design firm about this, and the subject of schools came up, and the design of a school, and here's the budget, and it's too much, and shifting the baseline of what we're actually doing here. Are we designing a building, or are we improving learning in this school? What is our actual goal, right? So once we have focused on the fact that biophilic design quantifiably improves learning, cognition, memory retention, et cetera, graduation rates, we're in a different kind of conversation about what stuff costs, right? Because the bottom line of the conversation has shifted to value and meaning. And that's very important, I found, in terms of getting stuff built.
okay, one last comment from me, and that is I want to remind all science and design certified designers to look at some of your projects and see which ones you might want to submit for a webinar later this year. To Helena, applause and thank you very much.
Thank
I
you for
loved it,
having
and
me.
I know the group loved it.
Thank you
So
for having me.
thank you, and goodbye, everybody. I'll be
Goodbye.
sending the link to this tomorrow.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.